Welcome back to Bargirl Baddies. Today's story is going to hurt a little differently than usual. We're not talking about a bargirl scam or a romance gone wrong. We're talking about something more insidious, more calculated, and frankly more devastating because of how legitimate it all seemed. This is about a man who lost $400,000 in Chiang Mai. Not in a single night of poor decisions, not to a woman he fell for, but to a friend, a business partner, someone he trusted completely, someone who knew exactly what buttons to push and exactly how to make a dream feel so real that common sense didn't stand a chance. His name is Marcus Chen. He's 32 years old, from Vancouver, Canada, and by the time you finish hearing his story, I want you to ask yourself honestly whether you would have seen it coming. Because I'm not sure I would have. This is his email to us in his own words. Before we dive in, do me a favor. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever been burned by someone you trusted abroad, or if you've seen this kind of thing happen to someone close to you, share your story. And if this is hitting a little too close to home, hit that subscribe button. You're not alone in this. Let's get into it. I'll be honest with you. When I finally sat down to write this email, I had to pour myself a drink first. Not because I'm still in Thailand, drowning my sorrows in a bar somewhere. I'm back in Canada now, living in my younger brother's basement in Surrey, trying to figure out how a guy who spent a decade building a career in software development ended up broke, humiliated, and mentally destroyed at 32. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to when this all started. Because the truth is, the scam didn't begin in Thailand. It began in my head, long before I ever booked a flight. 2 years ago, I was living what most people would call a pretty decent life in Vancouver. I had a good job as a senior developer at a mid-sized tech company, pulling in about $110,000 a year. I owned a condo with my wife Sarah in East Van, nothing fancy but it was ours, and we bought it just before the market went completely insane. On paper, everything looked fine, but if you've ever been in a relationship that's dying slowly, you know that paper doesn't mean much. COVID lockdowns did something to us. Or maybe they just revealed what was already broken. Either way, by early 2023, we were done. The divorce was civil, almost boring. We sold the condo, split everything down the middle, and went our separate ways. No kids, thank God. Just two people who realised they didn't actually like each other very much. When the dust settled, I was sitting on about 470,000 Canadian dollars, my half of the condo sale, some savings, a bit of inheritance from my grandfather that I'd never touched. I moved into a small rental apartment in Kitsilano and went back to work, but something had shifted. I couldn't focus. I'd sit in Zoom meetings about product roadmaps and sprint planning and feel this tightness in my chest like I was suffocating. Vancouver felt impossibly expensive and impossibly grey. I was making decent money, but spending most of it on rent for a place that didn't feel like home. I had friends, sure, but most of them were married now, having kids, locked into their own lives. I felt completely untethered and completely trapped at the same time. That's when the YouTube algorithm got me. I'm sure you know how it works. You watch one video about someone who quit their job to travel Southeast Asia, and suddenly your entire feed is digital nomads in Bali, expats retiring in Thailand, guys my age talking about how they're living their best lives for a fraction of what it costs back home. I started watching them obsessively. Channels about Chiang Mai specifically, the old city, the cafes, the mountains, the cost of living breakdowns showing how you could live comfortably on $1,500 US a month, the community of entrepreneurs and remote workers, the idea that you could reinvent yourself completely, that you didn't have to follow the script everyone else was following. I'd always been a practical person, risk-averse really, the kind of guy who maxed out his RRSP contributions and read the fine print. But watching those videos, I felt something I hadn't felt since before the marriage fell apart. Hope, possibility. Like maybe there was a version of my life that didn't involve sitting in a beige office or a beige apartment waiting for beige years to pass. I started researching seriously. Visa options, neighbourhoods, co-working spaces, what it would actually take to move there and work remotely or start something new. The company I worked for went fully remote during COVID and stayed that way, so theoretically I could work from anywhere with decent internet, but the time zone difference with Vancouver would be brutal. And honestly, I didn't want to keep doing that job anyway. I wanted a clean break. I wanted to build something of my own. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like a midlife crisis, except I wasn't even at midlife yet. But after a decade of building other people's software and a marriage that ended in polite indifference, I needed to do something that felt like mine. In September 2023, I quit my job. I gave notice, wrapped up my projects, and told everyone I was taking some time to travel and figure things out. Most people thought I was crazy. My parents definitely did. My mum kept asking what my plan was, like I was supposed to have the next 10 years mapped out before getting on a plane. But my dad, who'd worked the same government job for 35 years, just looked at me and said, "Make sure you don't regret not doing it." So I didn't let myself overthink it anymore. I booked a one-way ticket to Chiang Mai for early October. I figured I'd stay a few months, see if it actually lived up to the hype, and take it from there. I had no idea I was walking into the biggest mistake of my life. The first 3 months in Chiang Mai were everything I'd hoped for, and more. I'm not exaggerating when I say I felt like I'd woken up from a long, grey dream. I landed at Chiang Mai International on a warm October evening, and the air hit me the second I walked out of the terminal. Not hot, just warm and alive in a way Vancouver never is. I took a red Songthayu to my Airbnb near Nim and Hayman, and even that felt like an adventure. The streets were busy, but not chaotic. There were temples lit up in gold, street food vendors grilling skewers that smelled incredible, cafes with fairy lights, and people sitting outside with laptops and iced coffees. I'd rented a modern one-bedroom condo in a small building off Niman Road. Nothing flashy, but it had floor-to-ceiling windows, good air conditioning, and cost me about $600 a month. 600 for a place that would have been 3,000 in Vancouver. I kept thinking there had to be a catch, but there wasn't. It was just genuinely affordable, and that affordability bought me space to breathe. I fell into a routine pretty quickly. I'd wake up without an alarm for the first time in years, walk to one of the dozens of cafes in the area, order a flat white and some kind of rice dish I couldn't pronounce, and just exist. I wasn't working yet. I was living off my savings and telling myself I was in a transition phase, figuring out what came next. I joined a co-working space called Pond Space, mostly to meet people and have somewhere to go during the day. That's where I started making friends. Other Canadians, Americans, Australians, Brits, all in their late 20s to early 40s, all running online businesses or freelancing or taking a break from whatever their old life was. It felt like a real community. We'd meet up for dinners, explore night markets together, take weekend trips to Pai or Chiang Rai. Everyone was friendly in a way that felt genuine, not transactional. There was the shared understanding that we were all there for similar reasons. We were all looking for something different, something better, or at least something that didn't feel like we were slowly dying inside. For the first time since my divorce, I didn't feel lonely. I felt like I belonged somewhere. That's when I met Colin. It was mid-November at a networking event for expat entrepreneurs at a bar called The Roof. Someone had organised it as a casual mixer, and about 30 people showed up. Colin was one of those guys who just commands a room without trying too hard. He was British, late 30s, tall and fit, with the kind of easy confidence that comes from actually knowing what you're doing. He ran a co-working and co-living space called Basecamp near the Old City, and everyone seemed to know him. People kept coming up to him, shaking his hand, laughing at his jokes. He had that energy, you know? The kind of person you want to be around because they make everything seem more interesting and more possible. We got talking at the bar, and he asked me the usual questions. Where was I from? How long had I been in Chiang Mai? What brought me here? I told him the short version, the divorce, the burnout, the need for a reset. He nodded like he'd heard it 1,000 times. He told me he'd come to Thailand 5 years earlier after selling a digital marketing agency in London. He'd been bouncing around Southeast Asia for a while before settling in Chiang Mai and starting Basecamp. He said it was the best decision he'd ever made. He was making good money, living well, and actually enjoyed what he did. He made it sound simple, like it was just a matter of taking the leap and figuring it out as you go. We ended up talking for over an hour. He invited me to come check out Basecamp, said I'd like the vibe and the people. I went the next day. It was impressive. A beautiful old Thai house that had been renovated into a co-working space with private rooms, a lounge area, fast internet, a small gym, even a pool. There were about a dozen people working there that afternoon, and the atmosphere was relaxed but productive. Colin introduced me around, showed me the space, didn't try to sell me on anything. He just made it clear that if I wanted a desk, I was welcome. I signed up for a monthly membership that day. Over the next few weeks, Colin and I became friends. Real friends. or so I thought. We'd grab dinner after work, hit up live music spots, talk about business ideas and what we wanted to build. He was generous with advice, introducing me to other expats who were doing interesting things, inviting me to events and gatherings. He seemed genuinely invested in helping people succeed. I started spending more time at base camp, not just working, but hanging out. It became my second home. Colin became someone I trusted, someone I looked up to, honestly. He had the life I wanted. Established, respected, free. He'd figured it out, and he made it seem like I could too. That's the thing about a good con. It doesn't start with a pitch. It starts with friendship, with trust, with making you feel like you're part of something. And by the time the pitch comes, it doesn't feel like a pitch at all. It feels like an opportunity. Like the logical next step. Like the universe aligning in your favor. That's exactly how Colin played it. And I walked right into it with my eyes wide open, thinking I was finally building the life I'd come to Thailand to find. By December, Colin and I were spending time together almost every day. It wasn't just co-working space interactions anymore. We'd meet for breakfast at Rustic and Blue, take motorbike rides up to Doi Suthep on the weekends, hit night markets in the old city. He introduced me to his inner circle, expats who'd been in Chiang Mai for years and seemed to have their lives completely dialed in. A guy named James, who ran a successful SEO agency. A woman named Sophie, who owned 3 Airbnb properties around the city. Another British guy, Tom, who'd started an outdoor adventure company doing tours to hill tribe villages. They all seemed to be doing well. Actually well, not just Instagram well. And they all treated Colin with this quiet respect, like he was the elder statesman of the group, the guy who'd paved the way. What I didn't realise at the time was that this was all part of the setup, the slow build, the social proof. Making me see what I wanted to see. Because when you're sitting at a rooftop bar in Chiang Mai with successful expats, drinking craft beer that costs $2, looking out at the mountains in the distance, it's really easy to believe that you found something real, that you're exactly where you're supposed to be, that the people around you have cracked the code and you're being let in on the secret. It was mid-December when Colin first mentioned the expansion. We were having dinner at a Thai restaurant near his place and he was telling me about how Basecamp was doing better than he'd projected. He'd hit capacity and had a waiting list. He said the digital nomad wave was just getting started, that Chiang Mai was about to explode even more, and he was looking at opening 2 new locations in the city, plus 1 in Bangkok. Bigger spaces, better amenities, targeting the growing remote work crowd. He talked about it casually, not like he was trying to sell me on anything, just sharing what he was working on. I asked him about funding, and he said he was talking to a few potential investors, but wanted to keep it within people he trusted. People who understood the vision and the community aspect, not just some VC firm that would push him to scale too fast and ruin the culture. I remember feeling a little spark of interest when he said that. Not because I was looking to invest, I hadn't even thought about it, but because it sounded exciting. It sounded like something real and tangible, not some vague plan. He had the track record. He had the reputation. If anyone could pull it off, it seemed like Colin could. A week later, he brought it up again. We were at base camp late one evening. Most people had cleared out, and we were sitting by the pool with beers. He asked me what my long-term plan was, whether I was going to stay in Chiang Mai, or if this was just a temporary thing. I told him honestly that I didn't know, that I was figuring it out as I went, but that I couldn't live off savings forever. I needed to build something, or at least generate some income. He nodded and said he'd been thinking about our conversations, about my background in tech and project management, about the fact that I actually had capital to work with, which most people in the nomad scene didn't. Then he said it. He said he thought we'd make good partners, that if I was serious about staying in Thailand and building something meaningful, he had an opportunity that could work for both of us. He needed $400,000 to secure the leases on the new properties, handle renovations, and cover operating costs for the first 6 months until they were cash flow positive. In exchange for that investment, I'd own 50% of the new ventures. Equal partners. He'd handle operations and community management, the stuff he was good at, and I could oversee the tech infrastructure, the booking systems, the digital side. He said we'd formalize everything properly, set up a Thai company, get lawyers involved, do it right. But he wanted to move quickly because the real estate opportunities he'd found wouldn't last long. I didn't say yes right away. I'm not that impulsive, or at least I didn't think I was. I told him I needed to think about it, do some due diligence, understand the numbers. He said, of course, that he'd put together a full breakdown for me, projections, cost analysis, everything. He seemed almost relieved that I was taking it seriously rather than just jumping in. That made me trust him more. A scammer would have pressured me, right? Colin gave me space. He gave me time. He made it feel like my decision. Over the next 2 weeks, he showed me everything. Spreadsheets detailing projected revenue based on current base camp numbers scaled up. Estimated costs for leases, renovations, furniture, staffing, profit margin calculations. He took me to see the 3 properties he was looking at. 2 shop houses near the old city that could be converted into beautiful co-living spaces, and a building in Bangkok near BTS Phrom Phong that was perfect for the location. He introduced me to a Thai lawyer he said he'd worked with before, a woman named Nok who had an office near THET. She seemed professional, spoke good English, and explained how we'd structure the business. He even showed me bank statements from Basecamp's Thai business account showing consistent monthly revenue. I ran the numbers myself. I couldn't find holes in them. The math worked. The digital nomad trend was real and growing. I'd seen it firsthand. Chiang Mai was filling up with remote workers, and quality co-living spaces were limited. The investment would eat up most of my liquid capital, but the projected returns were substantial. Within 2 years, according to Colin's projections, I'd not only make back my initial investment, but be pulling in 60 to 80,000 US annually in profit share, passive income while living in Thailand. The dream. I talked to a few other expats in the community, casually, not mentioning the investment but asking what they thought of Colin and Basecamp. Everyone spoke highly of him. James, the SEO guy, told me Colin was one of the most solid people he'd met in Thailand. Sophie said she wished she'd gotten in on Basecamp when Colin first started it because he'd turned down several investor offers over the years to keep control. That detail stuck with me. If he'd turned down money before, this wasn't just about fundraising, he was choosing me specifically. That felt significant. I went back and forth for days. I called my dad, didn't tell him the full amount, just said I was thinking about investing in a business opportunity in Thailand. He asked if I'd talked to a lawyer. I said yes. He asked if I trusted the person. I said I did. He said be careful, but that I was old enough to make my own decisions. My mom was less supportive, but she'd been against the whole Thailand move from the start, so I didn't put much weight on her concerns. On January 8th, I told Colin I was in. We met at a nice restaurant to celebrate, and he seemed genuinely excited. Not overly so, just happy and appreciative. He said we were going to build something special together, something that actually helped people and created community. He talked about legacy, about creating spaces where people could reinvent themselves the way we both had. It felt meaningful. It felt right. The money transfer happened in 3 installments over 2 weeks, because my bank flagged the initial attempt to wire the full amount, and I had to break it up to avoid triggering more compliance reviews. 150,000 first, then another 150, then the final 100. Each time, Colin confirmed receipt and sent me screenshots of the funds in the business account. We signed documents that not prepared, partnership agreements and business registration paperwork. I didn't hire my own lawyer to review them. I know how stupid that sounds now, but at the time it felt like overkill. Nok was a real lawyer with a real office. Colin was my friend. We were partners. Why would I need to protect myself from him? The first property lease was supposed to be signed in February. Then it got pushed to March because of permit issues. Then April because the owner wanted to make some repairs first. Colin seemed frustrated by the delays, which made sense. I was getting antsy too. I wanted to see progress, but he kept reassuring me that this was normal in Thailand, that things moved slowly, that we had to be patient with the bureaucracy and the Thai way of doing business. In the meantime, he started asking for small additional amounts. 5,000 for deposit on furniture that was on sale and wouldn't be available later. 3,000 for a design consultant who could help with the renovation plans. Another 4,000 for licensing fees that came up unexpectedly. Each request came with explanations and receipts, and each amount was small enough that it felt reasonable. I wired the money each time without much hesitation. What was another few thousand when I'd already put in 400? I was pot committed, as they say in poker. By May, I started to feel a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away. We still hadn't signed a single lease. The properties Colin had shown me in December were apparently no longer available, but he found better ones, he said. He'd show them to me soon. The Bangkok location was on hold because the landlord was being difficult. Base camp itself seemed quieter than it had been, fewer people around, and Colin was harder to pin down. He'd cancel dinners last minute, take days to respond to messages, always with apologies and explanations about how busy he was dealing with contractors and negotiations. I asked to see updated financials. He sent me PDFs that looked professional but didn't quite match the format of what he'd shown me before. I asked when we'd have a formal partnership meeting, maybe bring in an accountant to review everything together. He said soon, he just needed to get through this rough patch with the permits, and then we'd sit down properly. He was always just about to turn the corner, always 1 week away from everything falling into place. In June, I demanded a face-to-face meeting. No excuses. We needed to talk through everything transparently because I was starting to have serious concerns. He agreed. We set a date. He didn't show up. He texted 2 hours after we were supposed to meet saying he'd had a family emergency back in the UK and had to fly out immediately. He'd be back in a week and we'd sort everything out then. That's when I started digging. Really digging. I went to Knock's office. It was closed, permanently. A different business had moved in. I asked the building manager when she'd left. He said the office had been empty for 3 months. I tried to find Basecamp's business registration through online channels and Thai friends who helped me navigate the system. Nothing matched what Colin had shown me. The company name existed, but the ownership structure was different, and there was no record of my name anywhere. I reached out to James, Sophie, and Tom. James responded first and seemed confused. He said he barely knew Colin, had only met him a few times at events, definitely wasn't close friends with him. Sophie didn't respond at all. Tom's number was disconnected. I started asking around the co-working spaces, showing people Colin's photo. A few recognized him, but nobody seemed to know much about him. One guy said he thought Colin had left Chiang Mai months ago. Another said he'd heard Colin ran some kind of investment scheme but didn't have details. I felt like I was losing my mind. This was a person I'd spent nearly every day with for months. We'd travelled together, I'd met his friends, I'd been to his house. How could none of it be real? I tried calling him. The number went straight to voicemail, mailbox full. I sent emails, no response. I went to the address where base camp was supposed to be. The building was there, but it had been cleared out. A for-lease sign hung on the gate. I asked the security guard when the co-working space had closed. He said it shut down in April, 2 months ago. While Colin was still taking my money and telling me everything was fine, I finally went to the police. I brought every document I had, every screenshot, every receipt. They were polite, but not particularly helpful. They said this kind of fraud case was complicated, especially with foreign nationals and money that had moved through multiple accounts. They'd file a report, but I shouldn't expect quick results or any results at all, really. They suggested I hire a Thai lawyer who specialised in fraud cases. I did. He looked at everything and told me what I already knew in my gut. The documents were mostly fake. The business structures were shells. Knock might have been a real lawyer at some point, or someone pretending to be one, but either way she was in on it. Colin, if that was even his real name, had done this before. Probably in other countries, definitely to other people. The money was gone, moved offshore through cryptocurrency and accounts I'd never be able to trace. I spent the next month in a fog. I barely left my condo. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every conversation, every interaction, looking for the signs I'd missed. They were there. Of course they were there, the vague answers. The delayed timelines. The isolation from anyone who might have asked the right questions. The emotional manipulation disguised as friendship. But I'd been so desperate to believe in the dream, so desperate to feel like I belonged somewhere and was building something meaningful, that I'd ignored all of it. I'd handed over $400,000 to someone I'd known for 2 months based on trust and a handshake, and the feeling that I'd finally found my people. My visa was running out. I didn't have the money to stay even if I wanted to. I'd burned through another $30,000 on living expenses, and the lawyer fees and the extra cash I'd sent Colin. I was down to about $40,000 total. Not enough to start over. Not enough to do anything except slink back to Canada and figure out how to rebuild a life from nothing. I'm writing this from my brother's basement in Surrey. I've been back for 2 months. I got a job doing contract development work. Remote, paying decent but not great. I'm trying to save. I'm trying to move forward. But honestly, most days I just feel hollow. It's not even about the money, though losing that much hurts in ways I can't fully describe. It's about the betrayal. It's about realizing that the community I thought I'd found, the friendship I thought I'd built, the future I thought I was creating, it was all theatre. It was all designed to extract everything I had and leave me with nothing. I don't know if Colin was even British. I don't know if any of the people I met through him were real or part of the con. I don't know how many other people he's done this to or where he is now, probably running the same scam in Bali or Ho Chi Minh City or some other place, full of lonely expats with money and dreams. What I do know is this. I came to Thailand looking for freedom and purpose, and ended up more trapped than I'd ever been in Vancouver. I thought I was being smart, doing due diligence, trusting, but verifying. But the truth is, I was vulnerable. I was lonely. I was desperate for my life to mean something after the divorce and the burnout and the feeling that I'd wasted my 20s and early 30s on things that didn't matter. Colin saw all of that. He saw exactly what I needed to hear and exactly how to make me believe it. And I let him. Because I wanted so badly for it to be true. If you're reading this and thinking it could never happen to you, I hope you're right. I really do. But I thought the same thing. I thought I was too smart, too careful, too skeptical. Turns out none of that matters when someone knows how to play the long game. When they build trust over months instead of days. When they wrap the con in friendship and community and shared dreams. That's not a bar scam. That's not some obvious hustle. That's sophisticated predation, and it's happening to people like me every single day in places like Chiang Mai. I don't regret going to Thailand. I regret trusting the wrong person. I regret not hiring my own lawyer. I regret letting hope override common sense. I regret losing $400,000 and 2 years of my life to a fantasy. But I'm still here. I'm still rebuilding. And if sharing this story stops even one person from making the same mistake, then maybe it wasn't all for nothing. Marcus's story hits different because it's not the scam we talk about most on this channel. There's no romance angle, no Bargirl, no obvious vice. This is about something more insidious. It's about predators who understand that expat communities are full of people in transition, people carrying their life savings, people desperate for belonging and purpose. Those vulnerabilities are worth more than any attraction or lust. They're the foundation of long cons that destroy lives. $400,000. Gone. Not because Marcus was stupid or reckless in a traditional sense, but because he was human. Because he wanted to trust someone. Because he wanted to believe that he'd found his tribe and his path forward. Colin, or whatever his real name is, understood that perfectly. He built the trust slowly, surrounded Marcus with social proof, created urgency without pressure, and made the investment feel like the natural evolution of a friendship rather than a transaction. This is what I need you to understand. Thailand, Bali, Vietnam, all these digital nomad hubs. They're incredible places, full of genuine people and real opportunities. But they also attract sophisticated scammers who've refined their craft over years and dozens of victims. They know the expat playbook. They know the emotional journey from burnout to hope to desperation for reinvention. They know how to position themselves as mentors, friends, partners. And they know that most victims won't report it, either because they're too embarrassed or because the legal systems make recovery essentially impossible. If you're thinking about investing money in any business opportunity abroad, especially in a country where you don't speak the language and don't fully understand the legal system, please do these things. Hire your own lawyer, not one recommended by your potential partner. Verify everything independently. Business registrations, financials, references. Talk to people outside the immediate circle, people who have no incentive to support the narrative. Move slowly, even when you're told opportunities are time-sensitive. And most importantly, understand that friendship and business are separate things. Someone can seem like your best friend and still rob you blind. Those two realities aren't mutually exclusive. Marcus is trying to rebuild now. He's working, he's saving, and he's living with the weight of what happened. He'll probably carry some version of this pain for years. But he had the courage to share his story, and that matters. Because somewhere out there, someone else is sitting in a Chiang Mai cafe, being pitched an opportunity by a charismatic expat who seems to have it all figured out. And maybe, just maybe, they'll remember Marcus's story and ask the questions he didn't. Maybe they'll protect themselves in ways he couldn't. That's the only redemption available here. That's the only way this cautionary tale serves a purpose. If you've been scammed abroad, or if you know someone who has, drop a comment. Share what happened. Let's create a knowledge base that actually protects people instead of leaving them to figure it out the hard way. And if you found value in this story, hit subscribe. We're building something here, a community that tells the truth about expat life without the Instagram filter, the good, the bad, and the absolutely devastating. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves out there. And remember, not everyone who offers you a dream has your best interests at heart.